This podcast is produced by the Portland Press Herald and sponsored by the Berlin City Auto Group. Experience easy, only at Berlin City.
Hey, this is Greg Kesich at the Portland Press Herald, and I'm here with Bill Nemitz. And Bill, what do you want to talk about today?
What can we not talk about? What is everybody talking about these days? I think our governor has kind of captured the state's imagination, wouldn't you say?
And the world, I should say. Bill has been interviewed by BBC and who else? NBC. MSNBC. The list goes on. There's a lot of interest in the governor's. I guess it begins with the governor's voicemail. That's really what this what started all this. Yeah.
You know.
What do you make of the stories today that say the governor is thinking of resigning?
I thought it was, with any other individual making that remark, I think people would sit up and quite reasonably take notice and think, goodness, could this be the end of this administration? My immediate reaction was that you have to apply what I call the Paul LePage differential to a comment like that and ask yourself, did he really mean it? Or is it just a kind of a fleeting thought that went through his head? And sure enough, by afternoon, he was tweeting, I believe, that anyone who thought that was a serious contemplation of resignation was apparently mistaken.
I think the things that he says are things that he feels, not that he thinks.
Right.
And it comes from his gut, and I think he's feeling really sorry for himself. I think he's embarrassed by all the attention. The charges of racism seem to be very embarrassing for him, and I think that's what led to the famous voicemail.
Yeah, I think we should point out too that we refer to the charges of racism. That in this whole episode, there's no hard evidence of anybody ever calling Paul LePage a racist. Drew Gatine insists that he did not do that. What's not clear is what was related to him during that initial press encounter, how it was characterized. But you're right. I mean, it really, whatever it was, it struck a chord with him. And I liken him right now to a heavyweight fighter late in the fight who just got hit with a haymaker and is struggling mightily to find his balance, to find his legs, and isn't quite sure where he isn't quite sure what he should do, is determined to see himself through to the end of the fight, but doesn't quite at this moment have the wherewithal to do it. He's very confused. He's more disoriented right now than I've seen him in 5.5 years.
Yeah, I would agree. The fight I was thinking of was the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield fight, where he was getting beat, and he just he felt it was more honorable to lose by fouling out, by biting off Holyfield's ear, than it would be. So he's capable of anything.
So
I
we
think,
should
at this
stay
point.
tuned. I
yeah,
suppose,
exactly.
Huh? Yeah. No, I think he's really. People have asked me repeatedly over the past few days, how does this compare? And early on, I was having difficulty answering that question because I thought, well, he's done and said a lot of outrageous things before. I have less difficulty answering that question now, only because of the widespread and very vocal public reaction that has taken root. This clearly is different from all the other things, and I think it's primarily because of the two things. One is just the coarseness of that voicemail and the fact that it was put out there for everyone to hear, unvarnished, and there's no way that you can say he was misinterpreted. You can't say he was misquoted. You can't say that he didn't mean it. I mean, that was as visceral a voicemail as you could imagine. And the second thing, I think, is this insistence on his part to inject this issue of race into any discussion he has of Maine's drug crisis. That running in parallel with the Trump campaign right now and the vicious racial overtones of that campaign, I think has many people reaching their wits' end. They just don't want to hear this anymore. They're tired of it. They're tired of people being divided by it. So when you see those two things in confluence with LePage, I think this puts this incident far and above anything that's happened before.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the two things that really stood out this week have been Amy Volk's Facebook post. The Republican state senator posted that I don't know whether it's substance abuse or mental illness or just plain ignorance. You know, when just plain ignorance is your best choice of the three, that should be trouble for a politician.
That's your escape hatch.
Yeah. And then the other one was Thibodeau saying that she's not on an island, you know, implying that there are a significant number of other people who agree. That's Senate President Michael Thibodeau, a Republican, and that something more than just words would have to take place.
Right. Yeah, and Thibodeau's statement spoke volumes, because when he said that Senator Amy Volk was not on an island, what he was saying is that there are a number of Republicans in the legislature right now who feel, and I think quite rightly, that it is not in their, you know, I will certainly accept her at her word that she finds this personally repulsive, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it is not in their political self-interest to do nothing right now. Right. The timing of this thing could not have been worse if you're a Republican running for the legislature. This is right on the cusp of Labor Day, when politicking begins in earnest. Yeah. And the last thing you needed, if you're a Republican, incumbent or not, running for the legislature, was to have something like this draped around your neck as you hit the campaign trail. So those Republicans, I think, are the ones you're going to want to watch in the next couple of days, because for them, to do nothing could very well spell political suicide. They need to do something. They need to do something tangible to show to the voters that they're taking this as seriously as most voters are.
I don't think we should underestimate how popular the governor is within a certain segment of the voters, and they're not evenly distributed around the state. So some of these legislators are going back to districts where people are very supportive of the governor and believe everything that he said they also believe. And so this is going to create a lot of conflict within the two caucuses, the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, about how far they'd be willing to go without risking alienating a key part of their constituency.
This is something I think we've already seen play out more in the Senate caucus, where there's been that kind of division between what we'd call the moderate Republican senators and the hardcore conservative Republican senators. At the House, not so much, but I think what you're going to see now is that same kind of fracturing finding its way more down into the House, if for no other reason because of this need for political survival. And I think all eyes right now are shifting away from Governor LePage as he figures out what he's going to do, and are on the Republicans in the legislature to see what they're going to do, because I think this is a big issue this fall, and you know, depending on how, as long as they don't blow it, either way the Democrats win. Whether there's a caucus, whether there's a special session or whether there isn't, whether LePage resigns or whether he doesn't. He's really handed the Democrats quite the bludgeon going into November here.
Another violent image.
Sorry.
remember when Maine politics was boring?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Who knows? It's going to be a one way or another. It's going to be a very tumultuous fall, and this is without even bringing Trump into it.
Right.
You know. So. Right. I mean, these things happening in parallel is very fascinating.
So we'll have to have this conversation again. Thanks a lot. This was great.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Portland Press Herald podcast. The Press Herald podcast is now available in iTunes. Visit our website at pressherald.com, and you can also email us at podcast@pressherald.com.